Welcome to the Worth It Practice podcast. Happy New Year. It's 2026, and I am so excited to talk with you today about making decisions in your business. And I want to talk about making decisions and how to make decisions in your practice and how I make decisions in my practice, because this is an area where I see a lot of clinicians struggle. And it makes sense that we struggle because we're not sure what decision to make when we run into a business problem and we don't want to make the wrong choice. Do I hire this admin? Do I bring on this therapist? Do I create this clinic? Do I accept this kind of client? Do I provide this kind of service? There are constant decisions that we have to make. But if we don't make any decision, then we've made a decision to not do anything, and then we're going to be paralyzed and we're not going to grow. Part of being a CEO in your clinic and growing a successful group practice means that you have to be willing to make some decisions and take some risks. But you also want to have a way of figuring out whether the risk is going to be worth it to you. And I thought the most helpful thing I could do was talk about my own thought process when I take risks and make decisions in my practice. Because one thing I have going for me is I'm very action oriented. I take a lot of risks. I make a lot of decisions. Do they always work out? No. Do they often work out? Yes. And if they don't work out, I have never had a time where the decision has destroyed something fundamental. So that's part of what I consider when I'm trying to figure out whether or not I'm going to take a certain risk. Not much of a risk taker outside of business, by the way. I'm not going to jump out of an airplane, not interested in gambling, but I'm interested in betting on myself when I can justify making a decision. I'm going to talk you through it. I'm going to tell you how I make these sorts of decisions, the sort of factors that I consider. I'm going to give you some real life decisions that I've made and the pros and cons of making those decisions. And then I hope that having this framework will be helpful to you as you grow the business you want to grow in 2026, because this is an exciting year, an exciting time to grow your business, and I'm excited for you. So when I am trying to make a decision in my practice, the first thing I go with is just, do I want to? Do I want to? Gut check. If something is not appealing to me, if somebody said, you know what you should do? You should bring on a lot of trainees and students into your clinic. The reality is I have no interest in doing that. I mean, the math could make sense, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to spend my time supervising trainee therapists. That is not what I'm interested in doing, not a way I want to spend my time. And so I have an immediate gut check reaction to that. Nope, I don't want to do it. And so guess what? I don't do it. So sometimes you just have an immediate gut reaction. Now, I do ask myself, I try to be really honest with myself, and I say, do I not want to do this because I'm really not interested or because I'm scared? Because often if you're afraid of something, it's actually a sign you should do it. Like we raised our rates this year, and whenever I do that, I feel scared, but that's not a reason not to do it. Does that make sense, that difference? But I'm also someone who's willing to do things I'm afraid of. So that's not usually the reason. If I don't want to do something, it's because I have a gut feeling of that's just not what I want to build. It's just not what's interesting to me at that moment. And I really trust that a lot, actually, if I bring on a new therapist. If I'm meeting with someone, I ask them the same question every single time. I'll share with you what it is. So my favorite interview question is, if everything worked out for you and worked out for me, and you got to have the business relationship with me that you would want to have, that would be perfect for you, and if everything could happen just like you imagine it, what would our business relationship look like and what would you be doing? It's a great question because I ask it first, and often I get an answer that turns me off. And immediately, if I don't like someone's answer to that question, I know we're not going to be a good fit to work together. So often, very quickly, I'll realize, oh, this is not a good person to bring into my clinic. They are not going to be a fit for me based upon the first thing that they said. And then it kind of doesn't matter what else is going on with them, what modalities they're trained in, how experienced they are, what their references say, what hours they could work, what the profitability is in our working relationship. If I don't like them, if I don't feel excited about them, they can't join. So those are the way that you can feel out your gut decisions. But then when I get to more complicated decisions, I use math. And I know that you probably don't like that answer because often we do not become psychologists because of a deep love of math. However, being able to do simple math, back of the napkin math, has saved me so many times from making bad decisions and has helped me know when I'm about to make a good decision. And then I'm aware of when we get into math that is beyond my pay grade, right? When we are into like tax questions and big questions that I know I need to involve my accountant or a fractional CFO to answer that question. So I know which math I feel comfortable doing and which math I don't feel comfortable doing. But I'll walk you through some examples of those things. It's kind of funny, my 6-year-old daughter tells me she also wants to be a psychologist. She calls it being a feelings doctor. So if she does this, she'll be the 3rd generation. We'll see if she does it. But she said to me after a particularly hard day in 1st grade, I won't have to do math if I'm a feelings doctor, right, Mommy? And I was like, oh, sweetheart, I do so much math. But it's okay. You can learn to do math. It's possible for you. We can do anything. All right, let me give you some examples of times when I use math to figure out whether a business decision will be profitable. So assuming that I'm in a situation that is, I'm not worried about ethics, it aligns with my vision, it aligns with our core values, right? Client care is being respected, all of the basics are happening. That's when I pull out math. So this will happen if, for example, I'm figuring out, do I want to offer work opportunity to a contractor? So many of our clinicians are contractors. I'm not going to discuss the pros and cons of that today. That's actually controversial a little bit, but that's a decision you have to make with your attorney and figure out if that works in your business. But for me, a lot of my clinicians are contractors and they work full-time other places. And then for me, they work in Thriving Child Center or PCIT experts. We're able to give them cases for a smaller amount of hours a week. They want to do something else on the side. So let's say that I have met with a contractor who is interested in work opportunity from PCIT experts. So for me, an ideal contractor who wants to do work in my PCIT experts clinic, which you just heard about last week, so you can listen to that episode if you're curious about it. But if that person wants to do that kind of work, they have to be PCIT certified. And it's best for me if they're a psychologist and they live in a PSI-PACT state, because that means that they can do virtual PCIT all over the country. It also means that if they're in the PCIT expert side of things, they're virtual. And the reason why all of this is important is it means that the cost for me to bring on a contractor and the cost to the business is actually very low. So when I am looking at, should I offer work opportunity to this person, I'm thinking about profitability, because I am not going to offer work opportunity to someone in a way that it does not end up being profitable for the business. And I've seen clinicians do this. I've seen clinicians not do the math and then offer work opportunity to a contractor or hire an employee and end up actually spending money. They think that they're making money, but they're paying so much, or they can't actually support that decision financially, and then the decision costs them money. So I'm never going to allow that to happen to me. I need to protect the business. The way you protect the business is to make sure that it is profitable. So I'm going to do some calculations. So if I'm talking to someone and they are a good fit and I like them and they have the right skill set, and I'm questioning, should I bring them on as a contractor? This is the way that I think about it. So I know what it costs me to offer work opportunity to a contractor. And again, it's not very much. I need to pay for their EHR. I need to pay for their hush mail. I do not need to pay for their advertising if they're joining PCIT experts, because we do advertising for the whole clinic for PCIT. So they don't need anything extra special. they're going to cost a little more admin time, although that's very, very hard to calculate. So when I look at those expenses and I run the math on how much we can charge for their services and then what my take home will be, if a PCIT experts contractor sees one client a month, it will cover my expenses. That's one of the nice things about being able to offer virtual therapy. Oh, I guess the other cost is putting them on the malpractice insurance. So it is not expensive. It is very, very low risk. As long as they are willing to see enough clients a week at peak times when I can actually give them the clients, and we are able to get more people on their schedule than that. So if everything fails and they don't see any clients, it still is not costing me that much money. And I'm almost certainly going to give them at least one client a month. So that's the sort of math that I'm doing. And then from that, I'm calculating out, okay, in order for this to work, they have to be willing to offer evenings and weekends. You know, if they said to me, I only want to offer 10 a.m. slots, people don't want that in a child psychology clinic. So I have to calculate that out. I'm like, those times are actually not good fit times. And they have to be seeing enough clients a week for my investment in bringing them on and getting them to be part of our services and offering them the work opportunity and the communication and the additional admin time and the admin understanding their specific strengths and weaknesses and putting them on the website. They need to be seeing a certain amount of cases a week. And so I go back to them and I say, hey, I need you to see this many cases a week at this time if you want to be offered work opportunity through PCIT experts, if that aligns with what you're looking for. And sometimes it doesn't. So sometimes people will say to me, oh no, I only want to see 2 clients a week. Then we're not a good fit. But I know exactly what I need them to do in order for it to work out. So that makes my decision really easy. It's like I take all of this into consideration. I've already done the math. I can go back to them and I can say, this is what will work. Is this mutually beneficial? And if that doesn't work for them, if it's not what they actually want to do and it doesn't fit, then I get to make the decision no. And I've done that before. There have been amazing people who do not want to work at the times where I could offer them clients, or they don't want to see enough clients where it makes the relationship worthwhile. And then we both pass. So that happens, but in many, many cases it works. So that's some of the math that I can do that's pretty easy, back of the napkin math. Does that make sense? Let me give you a situation that was slightly more complicated, where the math was a little bit harder. So I have an amazing psychologist in my clinic who came to me and said, I would like to have a different clinic, like a different location in a different part of town. And if I could get a clinic in that town, I would be willing to see more clients than I'm currently seeing in that location. And I would not decrease my clinic in your other location. And I'm sure that I could fill it because I've worked there in the past and I have a lot of contacts and I know that I could be really, really busy. I hadn't even been thinking about that. Like, this other part of the clinic is in a different area of town, like an area an hour away that I never go to. So I hadn't even considered, like, maybe we should open a new location. But in this case, I didn't immediately reject it. I had that like, oh, I don't know if I want to. And then I thought, no, you're just kind of scared. So maybe you do the math. So I did the math. I looked at it and I did some math and calculated how many clients would this clinician need to see in this other clinic for it to be profitable. And then what is the budget for the new clinic that would also work for me, right? Because if I rent a really expensive clinic, then suddenly the profit cancels out. Maybe the revenue is higher, but my expenses went up so much that it's absolutely not worth it. So I looked into it and I did this math. It also helped that this clinician was always very, very busy in the times that she did have available. And I believed, based upon what she told me from before, that she really could fill the clinic. So I was gambling on, is she someone who can actually fill that time? Now, if she were not full at all in the first location, I wouldn't even consider this for the second location, but she had a wait list and had some really desirable service options. if I'm saying to myself, okay, if I get her a clinic in this other location under this budget, what is the best thing that could happen? So let's say she fills all of these additional times that she agrees to. And what's the worst thing that could happen if she leaves tomorrow and I just have this clinic sitting empty? Will it tank my business? And so that's the math I was doing. And so I said to her, listen, if you're willing to see this many more clients a week, and you can find a clinic that our clientele would like under this dollar amount to sublease, I will say yes. And she said, I'm willing to see that many more clients. Let me find a clinic space. And then within a week, she said, I have 3 choices. I've looked at all of them and I like this one. It was perfect. It fit perfectly into the math. And it wasn't that high risk because I knew that even if she left the next day, that amount of money was not going to tank the rest of my practice. I could probably sublease it, hire someone else to put in it. I would be able to problem solve. It wouldn't be ideal, but I'm not going to make a decision where the risk is going to destroy the business. It was a calculated risk. So we agreed. The other factor in here that is not a math factor is the fact that this clinician is amazing and I wanted her to be happy and I wanted her to stay. I knew that if she had a clinic near her house and I gave her what she wanted, that she would be happier and more likely to stay in the clinic long term. Now, would I have given her that additional location if it had not worked out financially or had put the clinic at risk? Absolutely not. However, I was more willing to consider it because I didn't want her to leave and I wanted her to have longevity in the clinic. So the end of the story is that she did everything she promised, increased her rate, increased the amount of cases that she was able to see, filled immediately, and has continued to stay for years since 2021. So the end of that story was very happy. So that was like one of those decisions where I had to sit there and do math. Now, the kinds of decisions that I will not make without involving some kind of accountant or a fractional CFO is when I'm thinking about things like hiring somebody with a salary, right? Which is way, way, way more complicated. So I gave somebody a higher position in my clinic that actually ended up being a salaried leadership position. And I had to make sure that I could afford to pay her a certain salary. And salaries are complicated because you're making that salary whether you see clients or don't. You're suddenly into like PTO and additional benefits. The whole thing gets complicated. This is when I brought in my accountant, who's actually really good at running these numbers and I trust a lot. And I said, okay, this is what I was thinking about paying her. This is the research I've been doing. Let's look at the numbers. Let's look at the taxes. Let's look at the whole thing and figure out if I can afford this and what different options would be for different kinds of salaries. And so that's what we did. We had a whole meeting. She ran a whole bunch of numbers. We looked at a bunch of different factors. And then ultimately, I was able to offer a salary that was fair, but also was not going to jeopardize the safety of the business. And I would never go in and offer a salary without discussing that with my accountant or bringing in a fractional CFO to help solve that sort of problem. Because what you do not want to do is offer someone something that you cannot afford, because then you are in deep, deep trouble. I have seen clinicians put themselves out of business or make less money as the group owner than as a solo clinician because they've overpaid people in a way that they couldn't afford, because they get excited, we're emotional, we want to make people happy, and then we offer things that we can't afford, and then we're in the position of having someone working for us and then not being able to keep them because we can't pay for them. You don't want to have to say to somebody, oh, sorry about that, and we have to decrease your salary. Nobody wants that. We have to decrease your benefits. Nobody wants that. I would so much rather do all of the research up front, figure it out, and then know what to offer somebody. So those are the sorts of decisions that I make when I am running Thriving Child Center and PCIT Experts. First, I ask myself, gut check, do I want it? Then I do the math to figure out if I can afford it. and look at all the different factors. And then if the math is too hard or too complicated, then I end up getting paying for some consultation to figure it out in advance. And this has regularly worked out for me. Things don't go perfectly all the time, but I've never had a situation happen that has been financially devastating because I do this level of homework. But I also do the homework and then accept the risk and then go for it. I'm willing to bet on myself. You have to be willing to bet on yourself to be a successful business owner. This reminds me of grad school. So if you're a psychologist and you're like, what if I do this and it doesn't work out? Well, think about when you did your dissertation. You didn't know if that would work out either, right? Like we do our background. It's like writing your lit review. You're like, I have a hypothesis that I want to test out. This is how I think. This is the nerd I am. I have a hypothesis. I hypothesize that if I give this person this clinic space, then it will be profitable for both of us and it will improve the longevity of this clinician in the practice. And then you do your lit review, you look back, you look at all the data, you make an argument for why this hypothesis should be supported. And if you don't have enough of an argument, then you don't do that dissertation, right? You go back to your PI and you're like, I think we got to do something else. The literature doesn't support this, right? But if it's supported and you do the hypothesis and it seems to be a good idea, you run the experiment. That's all you can do. This is just a series of experiments. You just have to run the experiment and see what happens. And then you get to collect the data. And the data in this case is things like this person's ability to bring on new clients, retain those clients, the profit that comes in from that clinic after the expenses for that clinic are paid. Is this better than it was before? So those are the sorts of logic that you're running. But it's okay. It's okay to try things. It's okay to make mistakes. But for me, this rubric is always really helpful, and I'm constantly running it as I make decisions. And as my business has gotten bigger, I find myself involving accountants and fractional CFOs and other advisors more often than for those very simple sorts of problems. So I hope this is helpful to you. I would look back, look at the decisions you're making now, do some math, do some simple math, ask yourself if there's anything that you're missing. And if you feel stuck, run it by someone. But if you have a good hypothesis and it's supported by what you know, if the benefit of it going well is significantly worth the cost of it potentially failing, and you realize the only thing holding you back is being scared, then just do it. Again, only you know what's going on. I'm not giving you advice, but look at the situation and think about just going for it if it's only fear that is holding you back. Sometimes you just have to invest in things to see if they will end up working out for you. And I believe that you can learn anything. I believe you can make these hard decisions, and I believe you can build the business you want this year. And I'm so excited that you're listening to me today. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I will talk to you again next week.